Colin, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
And just to let everyone know, we are now live on the internet. Thank you very much.
Katie, would you like to do a mic check?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We sure can, thank you. Greg, would you like to do a mic check?
Yep, can you hear me okay?
You're all set, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Sarah, would you like to do a mic check?
Hi, sure thing. Hey
Great,
folks, my name is Sarah. Are we good?
Yes, you're all set, thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
And Maria, would you like to do a mic check?
Yes. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Hey, Jill, this is Heather Plamondon. Can I do a quick mic check? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Heather, thank you.
Perfect, thanks.
Jill, hi, this is Edith. Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
So it's my first time doing this. So when it's our turn to speak, should we share our video or not share it, or?
Yes, if you have a presentation, you will be able to share your screen at that time.
Okay, I think we asked Susan Chang to do that for us, so hopefully she'll join.
Okay.
This is Marianne Warren. Yes, Edith, Susan will be here and she'll be doing the PowerPoints for us.
Great, thank you, Marianne.
Key, would you like to do a mic check?
Hi, this is Key.
We can hear you, thank you.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Chavez. How are you?
Great, thank you so much. I'm sorry to be here just on time. I'm looking to see if Supervisor Cortese's arrived yet.
He just arrived. Vice Chair Cortese, would you like to do a mic check?
Hi, Dave Cortese. I'm here. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Great. So let's go ahead and do the roll call. Then we're going to do public comment, and our consent agenda is going to be a long one. So I'm just going to warn everybody.
Supervisor Cortese.
Here.
Present. Supervisor Chavez.
Here.
Present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. So with that, we're going to go to public comment. I'm going to see if there's anybody from the public who would like to speak to an item that is not on our agenda but has joined us today. I have no,
None.
I have no hands on this item. And so I'm going to now move to the consent agenda, to the consent calendar. And Supervisor Cortese and staff, I'm going to take this a little slow because there's a lot of moving parts to the agenda. So on the consent, yes, for consent, I apologize, just misplaced my notes. Okay. So we're going to move the following items to consent. Item 4, this is the seniors agenda. Item 5, the IHSS annual report. Item 6, the IHSS Public Authority report. Item 7, the Second Harvest Food Bank report. Item 8, the DEBS annual report. Item 18, the Silicon Valley Regional Communications System report. Item 19, the FAF Capital Projects and Deferred Maintenance report. And item 20, the county's 2012 Measure A report. On item 17, I'd like to request that we defer this to our next meeting. It was a very robust report, and I didn't have an opportunity to dive in at the level I'd like to. And on item 23, I also would like to move that to consent, and this was the Independent Redistricting Commission's recommendation to the board. And then there are also other items. I'm sorry, item 23 was already on consent. I'm sorry, I just want to make some comments to that. But on and then what was already on consent for those of you who are listening is item 21, item 22, item 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28, which so I wanted to say just and I'll make some comments to that and then see if Supervisor Cortese, if there's anything that you would like to change or add. On item 9, the schooling services report, and there are some in that area. Dave, I just wanted to let you know, I know this is going to be one of your last meetings, so I left those off. So if there's others you want to add, just know that I didn't add things that I thought would be important that you may want to hear. As a reminder, for the most part, items that were added to consent where the reports are very clear and direct, we just put them on because we don't have questions and we think they should go to the board, or if they should go to us, that we have the information that we need. So and there's some exceptions, and I'm gonna walk through some of those. Item 4 is to receive an annual report from the Social Services Agency regarding the seniors agenda. And I want to say to those working on it that I want to thank you for your work and the report. For future reports, we want to make sure that we're integrating the work and next steps relating to the digital divide for older adults, the study on older adults' caregiving needs, the partnership to provide free dental care, and the transportation needs assessment. I know those are all new initiatives, but I want to make sure they're in future reports, but the rest of the work was great. For item 5, this is to receive the annual report from SSA on the in-home supportive services program. In addition to the annual report, at the August board meeting, I requested information be brought back so we could look at the efficiency and effectiveness of our services. I was really hoping we could be able to use this report to assess where we might want to make some improvements. And while I appreciated the report and the supplemental attached, I I really want to understand more about this. And I understand that the wait times and application process have been improved, but I want to be able to have a more robust discussion on process and compliance. And also there seems to be some confusion. I just want to say to the staff who are working on this, I read these reports and they weren't responsive to me, and there was some confusion that it may have been my staff that was confused. No, I didn't feel like these were responsive enough for me to be able to use for the next body of work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask to have a meeting with Dr. Smith and with Mr. Mendicucci to discuss how to shape that better, because there may be just miscommunication between me and the staff. Item 6 is to receive an annual report from the Social Services Agency relating to in-home supportive services, the public authority. One of the recommendations in the report was around the need to translate consumer and provider training materials. For this, I would like to recommend the staff connect with the Office of Cultural Competency on what services are already available, since we have a pretty robust contract for translation services. Item 7 is to receive the report from Social Services relating to Second Harvest. I do just wanted to take this moment to say to Tracy and Leslie, thank you for all of the leadership that you've been providing during COVID, and that Second Harvest has been just an incredibly integral part of our safety net. And you know, honestly, it was COVID seemed just to give you the opportunity to shine, given the work you were already doing. So thank you for all of that. Item 8 is to receive the report from Social Services Department on employee benefits relating to the annual report, and thank you for that good work, and again, always a very clear report. Item 18 is to receive the final report on the status of implementing the Silicon Valley Regional Communication System. According to the report, the system is implemented as of August 2020. I want to thank County Communications for their work in getting this system operational. Item 19 is to consider recommendations relating to the status of fleets and facilities capital projects. And again, that was very clear. And I know this was in response to Supervisor Simidian's request as part of budget. I would just recommend that the staff include that as part of the budget discussions materials for our next budget discussion at the full board. And then on item 23, I wanted to just to thank the commission for bringing this thoughtful item to the committee. Item 23 is a report establishing an independent redistricting commission. I'm okay with leaving this item on consent. I think it should be forwarded to the full board for the full board's review. And then if it's possible, I'd also like to ask the staff to give some consideration to the recommendation of staff before it comes to the full board for the advantages and disadvantages of our current process methods. And then I'm really interested in local jurisdictions that have used this and local jurisdictions that may be interested, and reported important related analysis such as cost and also legality. I know my colleagues will have more questions, but those were some I wanted to tee up. All right, I know that was a long way to getting to consent. Supervisor Cortese, did you want to add anything to consent?
No, that's fine. I think just because of COVID impact on a couple of the reports that you left on the agenda, like schooling services, for example, it would be good just to hear. I just want to let staff know in advance, just a brief, not cursory, but a brief update on how things are going, trying to keep those programs moving, during the pandemic. So I appreciate you leaving them on just for that reason. But I just want to let staff know ahead of time, I don't have in-depth questions about those.
Great. And then staff, did you get that that laundry list? Are you all understanding that?
And I'm happy to make a motion to move the consent calendar as you just outlined it.
Great. There's a motion and a second. There's no discussion on that. Oh, I'm sorry.
We do have public comments.
Yeah, I apologize, Colin. I just saw that. Thank you very much. We'll go to public speakers. Thank you.
And will that be 2 minutes?
Yes, please.
The next speaker is Steve Chesson. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
I believe I've unmuted myself. Can you hear
There you
me?
go.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Supervisor Chavez, Supervisor Cortese, my name is Steve Chesson. I'm a member of the Santa Clara County Citizens Advisory Commission on Elections, also known as CASE, and I'm the maker of the motion to forward CASE's recommendation that the Board of Supervisors, either by resolution or ordinance, establish an independent redistricting commission. CASE would like for you to forward our recommendation to the full Board of Supervisors for their consideration. This is item 23 on your agenda today. In 2001, I was a member of the redistricting commission appointed by the Board of Supervisors to redraw the supervisorial districts after the 2000 census. While we were an advisory commission, if I recall correctly, the board, after some initial guidance to us, left us alone to take public input and develop a map, and accepted the map we developed without making any changes to it. Even so, the optics of an advisory commission, where the board has the option to make changes to the recommended map, are different from those of a truly independent commission, where board members have no more input than any other member of the public. The option of creating a truly independent redistricting commission did not exist at that time, nor did it exist for the 2010 redistricting cycle. But it does exist today because of bills signed into law in 2016 and 2018. And CASE believes that it would serve the people of Santa Clara County better for the new lines to be drawn by an independent commission. I note that due to my own political activity, I would be ineligible to serve on an independent redistricting commission. And that's okay by me, as it would give confidence to the voters that the lines were drawn without any political influence. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. I do note that I have another meeting to attend at 4 p.m. So if you do pull this item from the consent calendar, I hope it could be heard before 4 o'clock. I appreciate your consideration of the recommendation for an independent redistricting commission. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Helen Griego. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Good afternoon, Finance and Government Operations Committee. I'm speaking on item 23. My name is Helen Griego, and I'm the Northern California organizer for Common Cause. Common Cause is a 50-year-old nonpartisan organization dedicated to building an inclusive democracy, advocating for accountable and representative government at all levels. We have worked with our allies to establish the California Citizens Redistricting Commission, which is heralded as the best practice for independent, community-driven redistricting in the nation. We have also worked to support and/or establish other independent redistricting commissions in California cities and counties like Los Angeles County and San Diego County. We support redistricting processes that are as independent, inclusive, and accessible and participatory as possible. It is essential that the public has faith in their government. To achieve this, we believe that the redistricting process should ensure that voters pick their elected officials, not have the elected officials pick their voters. In other words, who draws the district lines critically matters, and it should be done by a fully independent redistricting commission. We also want to emphasize that the county should build an accessible and inclusive redistricting process. It must hold large numbers of hearings in all parts of the county so people in all neighborhoods can participate. The hearings should offer language translations and access to people with disabilities. They should be held on evenings and weekends to make them accessible for working people. And the county should do extensive community education and outreach in a variety of languages in traditional media, ethnic media, and social media. It should engage as many community organizations as possible in the process. California Common Cause offers our expertise and resources for redistricting, which you can find on our website, commoncause.org/California, and at localredistricting.org. We want to thank the Citizens Advisory Commission on Elections for their work to propose this important democratic reform. We are here today to support the report on independent redistricting and for it to be sent to the full Board of Supervisors for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our list.
Thank you very much, Colin. Thanks for that catch. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table. Seeing no more discussion, we'll now take a vote.
Supervisor Cortese.
Aye.
Supervisor Chavez.
Yes. Thank you. All right, so we're going to move to item 9, and this is schooling services.
Hi, good afternoon, Supervisor Chavez and Supervisor Cortese. Some updates for you regarding schooling services. We are seeing an increase in behavioral health referrals coming to our SLS coordinators, and our SLS providers are taking in all of the referrals and assessing their needs and opening the clients to the programs. We are also seeing, just another update, we have been providing services since the start of the school year, providing some drop-in services for students, for faculties, and for parents, as well as providing supports and psychoeducation and information about mental health awareness to the communities, to the schools, and to the parents as well. And that's through town hall meetings, also through our work with County Office of Education and providing presentations during resource fairs. We had one last Saturday in Spanish, and we have another one this Saturday as well. And then we have been working with our behavioral health services department providers, our community-based providers, to also provide outreach out to the communities and present at town halls and be part of that collaboration process in outreaching for students and providing information on mental health awareness.
Great. So is that all of the presentation?
That was just to address Supervisor Cortez's question. If you'd like, we can go through some updates on the reports.
Dave, up to you.
I'm satisfied with the report, and the thoroughness of the reports in general have been great all along. Outreach, I mean, we were talking last time around a little bit about, how to connect. I mean, and all the while we have this whole backdrop of digital divide and everything else. I appreciate how quickly schooling services pivoted, whatever word you want to use, toward, sort of a virtual connectivity to keep it going, to make sure the coordinators are getting the referrals on behavioral health, et cetera, which is so critical right now. I don't know if you've had a chance to explore the possibility of shirt tailing on, or sort of adding on to any other sort of mass efforts, communication efforts that will be going on in the county over the next couple of months, especially as we face what some of the experts are calling a potential, surge. Obviously, a lot of this, we now know that a lot of the districts are going to continue to sort of hunker down and not open, even though some schools are. So that said, I just want to make sure that we're continuing to get the word out that you do have a schooling services coordinator, or you may have one depending on the school district you're in, and here's how you can connect. And I think back to when Supervisor Chavez and I heard an issue about in this committee about senior tax exemptions, there were a whole bunch of great ideas that finance and tax collector came up with in terms of, including messaging. Now, admittedly, tax exemptions are relevant to tax collection. So, but I know that there are various things that go out that way, even by snail mail. And I guess I'm asking if you've had a chance to think about some of those potential opportunities yet. If not, that's okay. I would just ask that maybe you come back to us next month or in December and just let us know what, if anything, you've been able to come up with to further disseminate information. And again, I think if any of us thought that COVID was going to be resolved in the next couple months, I wouldn't be asking for such a thing, because obviously the face-to-face interactions is where we really want to be with this program, ultimately back to normal. Does that request sound reasonable, President Chavez and Catherine? I just want to make sure.
Yes, absolutely. We can definitely look into that. We have been providing more and more information about mental health awareness and accessing the SLS coordinators and also our behavioral health call center. So we've been putting that information out to the school districts and the communities through town halls, but we'll definitely look into some of the bigger places where we can do additional outreach.
Yeah, and obviously the physical outreach doesn't work as well anymore either, right? I mean, we even had to cancel Day on the Bay this year, but We appreciate you looking for, there might be some old school methodology as to just putting, an insert into an envelope or something that's going out for other reasons, or even one or two sentences could end up diverting somebody in a good way. So thank you, and we'll, look for a report back on that at some point over the next meeting or two, and I trust that one of us will follow up on that at the time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That's all I had.
Thanks, Maretta. All right, so we're receiving the report. I don't think that's actionable. Rob, no action we need to take? I'm going to assume we're good. We'll move on to item 10, and this is the quarterly basic income pilot report. Quarterly report, I think is what I meant to say there.
Good afternoon, supervisors. This is Sandhya Hermon with SSA, and I believe Melanie from the CEO's office should be here as well.
Okay, and Dave, did you have any questions on this report? Or did you want to have them give their presentation? You're on mute. Sorry, Dave.
My apologies. Yeah, if we could just have a brief overview.
That'd be great.
Don't need to go through item by item, but just give us a brief overview as to where we're at this point.
Sounds good. I'm happy to do that. Melanie, are you on? All right, I will take it away then. So I'm not going to walk you through the presentation, but
if you have a PowerPoint, please use it. I'll just everybody who speaks, if you have a PowerPoint, it's easier for us to follow you, which especially online. So I would encourage you all to do that if you're going to be making a presentation. So go ahead, Sandy.
All right, hang on. Let me just share my screen. I believe one was uploaded. Let me know if you see it.
Yes, we can.
Great. All right, let me just put this into slideshow mode. All right, and apologies, something must have kept Melanie because she was going to speak to these. But really quickly, this is just to refresh everyone's memories. Here's the timeline. We worked on this. We've been working on this since August of last year, and at a point now when it's been implemented. The recruitment efforts have been done in coordination with DFCS. And Melanie was really the point person in terms of speaking with youth and making sure we got responses. We identified 176, 110 were responsive. We had 96 that reside in Santa Clara County and meet the requirements. We have 13 who moved away and weren't eligible, and we finally got our list of the 72 oldest. We've sent the baseline survey out, and unfortunately haven't had the best response rate, had 24, but still that's a start. I think it's a 50-50 gender split, and primarily have 24-year-olds in our population, and then a quarter of the respondents are 25 of the population is 25, and then a much smaller number is in the 23-year-old bracket. Melanie's really moved heaven and earth to kind of get these debit cards set up, and I think it took a fair bit of time. But we have focused debit cards that have been mailed to all of the youth who completed the registration process, and they are really useful for a number of reasons. I think at first we were trying to see if we would use checks or other forms of payment, but I think this was the one that was decided upon as the best option. We're also offering to the participants, to all 72, free financial mentoring. And we had about 6 orientation sessions with all of the different, with the participants. And during this orientation, not only did we tell them about the basic income pilot, they were also told about the free financial mentoring, and that it was completely voluntary and what they would get out of it. And we had partners from Excite and MyPath really pitch it to them, and hopefully our foster youth will avail of these services. evaluation has been sort of a central part of this project from the start. And really, we want to evaluate the effectiveness of the pilot and hopefully help them achieve some stability during COVID-19. We're focusing primarily on survey data gathering. So there's a baseline survey, and then at every three-month check-in, there'll be a brief survey that's sent out to see how they're doing. Not only did we have the main participants in this project, we had several foster youth reach out to us and ask if they could participate. Those that were not eligible to participate, we asked them if they'd be interested in being a part of our comparison group. And really what that would entail is completing some surveys that would help us better understand their needs. And if they did that, they would get a cash compensation for completing the surveys. And we've had 25 agree to it. So we have a small comparison group of comparable youth who are participating in just the survey component. But it was all voluntary. So as part of the orientation, we did cover the evaluation plan and told them that participating in the evaluation is voluntary and the cash payments are not contingent on completing the surveys. But walk them through sort of the need to complete it. Here are some of the domains that are covered on the survey: demographics, household composition, spending habits, how they're spending their time. And we borrowed very heavily from a couple of other basic income pilot projects that have run across California, just so that we can have some comparable data. And yeah, so Melanie has been working on finalizing the contract for independent evaluators. There was some money that was received towards providing sort of gift cards to participants in the comparison group, and then also money that was raised, I believe, from Tipping Point to get the University of Michigan to help with the evaluation. So we hope to have in February of next year a report with some of the basic survey data, both from our participants and those foster youth who were ineligible to participate. And that is that.
Great, thanks, Melanie. Also, I see you. Supervisor Cortese, did you want to add anything or any questions?
And sorry, Melanie, I know I didn't see you on, so I don't know.
No, she just joined. Don't worry.
Okay.
No problem. I just wanted her to know we saw her.
Okay.
Dave?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair Chavez. First and foremost, thank you for continuing to move the program along, keep it on track, keep it on schedule, and so on. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the emphasis on the voluntary nature of, the survey process, the evaluation process, to keep in keeping with the philosophy of this kind of a UBI type of program. One thing I want to make sure we don't lose sight of, you may recall Supervisor Chavez and I were actually originally pretty vehemently opposed to having a comparison group or a group that was held out. And part of the reason for that is our concern about traumatizing or creating a have-not culture amongst young people that we know are generally otherwise equally situated. And I want to make sure of those participants who voluntarily, who are not part of the pilot, but who voluntarily agreed to participate in the process. Isn't that true that sounds like there are 25 of them in that category?
Yes, and they were not eligible to participate. So if they complete the surveys, they'll get about $150 over the course of the year, and that would just be for completing the survey. And we've said that part of it is to really get a better sense of their needs. We don't really do robust needs assessment with our transition age foster youth. So there are a lot of questions here that go beyond the basic income pilot, and I think can be used as good data to design future programs. So I think it really serves a dual purpose.
I'm
and
sure
also, just so you're aware, the reason they weren't eligible was because they'd chosen to leave the county. So it was clear when we were contacting them that they were within the age range, that it was a potential if they lived in the county, but those who didn't, we had already contacted them to find out how they were doing and found out they weren't in the county. And we said, I'm sorry, this program doesn't work, but your story is very important to us as we move forward, because if there is a factor that led you to decide to leave our county, we want to be able to capture that story, because we're looking how to help other youth when they're at a younger age and deciding how to move forward.
Right. So I appreciate that. So, and even with those clarifications, I just want to make sure they're asked about how they feel about not qualifying, not being in a position to qualify for a program like this, knowing that others are qualified. And that doesn't mean they were wrongly misqualified or disqualified. I'm not asking you to frame the question in any skewed fashion. I just think it's really, and the reason I'm asking you to ask the question is so that when ultimately the report comes back to the board, that there's also some information in terms of that's objective in the sense that we got it directly from the participants, but also a little subjective in terms of their subjective feelings, in again, a kind of a trauma-informed way, as if that even exists. I don't want to assume that it would. I don't want to, again, skew the responses or the questions, but I think there should be an open-ended question that is related to, thank you for participating in this program, almost a conclusionary question, perhaps, that just says, lastly, we would like to know your feelings about being included or excluded from qualifying for a program like this, and just let them say whatever they want. And I just would like to see those responses to come back. And part of the reason I want to see that is because if we start getting clues, or the Board of Supervisors does, obviously I'm an outgoing supervisor, but I trust Supervisor Chavez particularly, and the others will be very in tuned, and I think all of you will, to any red flags that come up in terms of behavioral health issues that are sort of embedded in those responses. Key phraseology, it was exciting to me, or it was depressing to me. It was whatever. I just think there's going to be some value in getting some open-ended survey responses from them on that point, and just to see where it goes from there. As I said, I trust all of you will know what to do with that information once you get it. Thank you.
Just to follow up, I want to make sure I understand something. I thought the program was capped at 72. And so what you're saying is that cap is in place because we have no one else who's eligible. Because in previous meetings, that's not what we were told. I don't know if that was by you, my recollection it was, but so we don't have any other kids who are eligible right now.
For those who we conducted the outreach with. So we started with the list of the 24-year-olds at the time and the 23-year-olds at the time. That's the larger 176 group. And from that group, we were able to just get the 72. There are others who have in this time period started to become of age, but we haven't reached out to them because, just as Supervisor Cortese mentioned, we don't want to create that us versus them type of a mentality. So we have their names, we have their contact information, and we can always reach out to them if for some reason some of the 72 don't stay in the program.
So I'm a little, I'm just trying to recall why we were at that number, because I think
Supervisor Chavez, if I could just interject, I think the phraseology you're thinking of is actually sort of in the background of my notes for today also, is that we were told the pilot program would consist of 72, 36 women, 36 men, which is consistent with today's report. Of the 131 were 24 years old as of April 29th, 2020. And that, the first time I saw that metric was at the Board of Supervisors meeting of the final appropriation itself. And I think we questioned it again at that time, but it is confusing. I'm not answering their question for your question for them, for the staff here, the administration. I do agree it's confusing to hear that there's 72 of 131 who are 24 years old as of April 29, 2020, but somehow the full 131 didn't qualify. And I heard in the presentation that there are people who are out of county, for example. And again, I don't want to take the mic away from our committee chair today, but what I heard the question being is why is there that gap between 72 and 131? What is the full reasoning behind that or explanation?
Yeah, and yeah, that's exactly right, Dave. I think I was confused because it sounded like the cap was somewhat arbitrary. And let me just say and I'll say this to Dr. Smith actually, because I know this isn't a decision at your level per se, but I think as we think about, we're going into our again, a terrible budget year, but as we're thinking about the folks that we most want to make sure are staying, really staying healthy. And even as we're considering what we're going to do to be helping employers or people who need work, I just want to make sure we're really thinking about this particular group of people who I think are incredibly underserved. And Dave, maybe what we can do is refer to the budget discussion, the expansion of the program to the next group of young people that are of age, and let the staff figure out what the cost would be, so at least the board could discuss it as part of this meeting today.
You're referring to the November workshops?
Yeah.
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Okay. Thanks, guys, because I'm sorry, numbers in my head, and I was trying to remember the backstory there. Dave, did you have any other comments or questions?
Oh, thank you. Thanks for bringing that follow-up question up.
Thank you. And Sandia and Melanie, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Now, the only thing I wanted to say to Supervisor Cortese's comment about the open-ended questions is we're going to have the same survey tool sent out to both comparison group and the main participants. So we'll be able to share sort of the effectiveness on a variety of metrics. We have some mental health well-being measures, so we'll be able to show you some other, quantitative data in addition to the qualitative to speak to the impact of the program. And I hope that will be some good information that we can share in coming months.
Yeah, thank you. And I was thinking that might be the case when I said, I started to say, maybe the question has to be along the lines of, please let us know, about your feelings about being included in the program, parentheses, or not, if that's the case, period. Just let them, leave them enough space to respond to that, even if it's just a single survey document. If you were in, let us know how it feels. If you aren't currently in the program, how do you feel about that? Thank you.
Thank you.
And my apologies for being late. If I could just add, this has been incredibly rewarding, but very time consuming. And Supervisor Chavez, to the point that you made, these youth are still youth. And that's been one of the lessons I think that we've learned. And they have required a lot of time and guidance, even just to get us to this point. So I know it looks like we are a little bit behind schedule, but it has taken a lot of virtual one-on-one attention to help talk them through a lot of these issues and let them know really the impact of their decisions on whether to participate in the program or not, and whether to take full advantages of the different components. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
So Dave, I'm going to ask that we receive the report with direction to have a report back as to what it would cost to get the next cohort fully funded for the next year.
I'm in agreement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and a second, and all those in favor. Colin, do we have to, Colin, I think you have to do something magic here.
No, not for a committee. I do not have to call the roll when you're both in agreement with the motion in a second.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And Rob is nodding. All right, thank you. Okay, so we're going to go on to item 11, the New Americans Fellowship.
Let me share my screen here. Do you see that?
Thank you. Yes.
Awesome. Great. I am super excited to be able to just give some brief highlights on the New American Fellowship program for this year that we just recently wrapped up. So it is a 10-week summer program. We were able to have 14 different youth participate and get placed actually in different county offices to provide ongoing mentorship, networking, and then obviously some county recommendations to the work. And I thank both of you actually for participating in those presentations that were extremely valuable. Just really quickly, the goals, it is about creating a career pipeline for DACA recipients, and it also is about really supporting research that is aimed to improve the services and programs that we offer to our immigrant communities. These are our 14 fellows. They were with us, they stuck it out. And I think to our previous presenter, Melanie, who talked about the level of hand-holding, support, and deeply rooted, I think, leadership that we had to really focus on. This was a program that I think was a labor of love and really took a lot of time in making sure that we were supporting their participation as the pandemic and wildfires and family commitments just continue to grow. Some of the things that we had to adjust for the actual program obviously was going virtual. We thought that that was going to be, I mean, it was a challenge. We thought it was going to be more of a challenge given the fact that we did see other fellowships and other internships actually get canceled. But we saw a very strong commitment from the fellows to continue. We also, for the first year, braided different career elements, like different career curriculums, brought in consultants, coaches, to really talk about the career pipeline. And there was a lot of folks from our county, Dr. Smith, Miguel, you both, right, who came into these spaces and really talked about what it meant to be a public servant in a very authentic and engaging way. And like I mentioned, we also, were able to place fellows in different offices. And I think that the offices gains a lot from having these fellows participate. They developed very thorough research papers that actually also we spent a lot of time preparing for. But I think that the investment and the return of investment was resounding throughout the county. Some key outcomes, and I'm not going to read through these, but I think wanting to really hold up that 7,700 hours were spent in doing census outreach and then also COVID response. So folks were going out to do community education, they were translating materials, participating in the EOC, and then hitting the streets doing census outreach. And so they actually said that that was actually one of the biggest kind of highlights of the fellowship, the fact that they were able to be in community doing the real work. Other contributions, like I said, fellows held healing spaces. They were able to receive different trainings on restorative justice. They participated and were able to volunteer in real-time campaigns, right? And so, and then language access, right? I think we kept talking about language access, obviously in relationship to COVID, but I think there was a lot of really great ideas and a lot of really great effort put into making sure that our immigrant communities were benefiting also from that language access contribution from the fellows. Some of the strategies moving forward, we know that the county, we have a real commitment to diversifying our workforce, and this is one of the ways in which we do that. The fact that we have a few of our fellows actually on staff, was the previous fellows actually as part of our staff, is a testament to that. We also know that several of our host sites, if it wasn't for like President Chavez stated, the difficulty in this budget year, did state like they would really actually like to have some of these fellows on board because of the expertise and because of the engagement with the immigrant community. I also won't get on into all these numbers, but I think one of the things that was really inspiring to us was this 92% number where they were interested in continuing to have a relationship with the county. There is a real interest in developing a post-fellowship alumni network. Right now we're at, with this graduating class, we're at 49 fellows that have gone through the program. And so what does that look like at a time where connection and being in community, like all of those things are hard, but I think there's a real commitment from the fellows to build that network amongst themselves, but continue that relationship with the county. Some of the proposals, I think, moving forward into this next year, continuing to build out what an alumni pilot would look like, considering actually moving from a 10-week program to potentially a 12-week program, just extending that a little bit. As a lot of you were able to participate in the different presentations, we also had a marathon meeting just trying to get through all the presentations. So is it a conference this year, right? I think that through my experience being here, being a part of the county for only 3 months, I see that there was so much information and so much participation and effort. And so how do we elevate and how do we uplift those voices? Obviously, thank you to everyone who participated. Thank you to both of your leadership, and a special thank you to Supervisor Cortese as a founder of this program. It's invaluable for the fellows that participated in it. And like I mentioned, I think it was one of the most inspiring programs for us at a time where there's so much uncertainty and chaos in our immigrant community. So thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. And let me ask Dave, I know this was your innovation. Wanted to get your reflections. Oh, I'm sorry. We have a couple of public speakers. Can we take the public speakers and we'll come to you, Dave? Thank you.
Our first speaker is the number 076. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking. Caller 76.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lizette, and I am a fellow from this past summer New American Fellowship. I just wanted to make known how important this fellowship is to me and to many of the fellows who have been part of it. There has been many opportunities where DACA recipients can't join into fellowship because of our status, and this fellowship did give that opportunity to us, as well as provided many resources and mentorship to the fellows. I personally had a great experience with many skills like public speaking and task handling, and not just developing those skills, but also conducting my own research, which has made me grown as a person. And I'm so thankful for that. I also met so many great people that share similar experiences as me, and we have become a little family. And yeah, I just want to let you all know that this was a great investment, and I am super happy that I was able to join in. And I just want to thank also all of my mentors. I had Maribel and Kathy and Carla, and I'm so appreciative of everybody who gave my mentorship to this fellowship.
Colin, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. The next speaker is Marilyn. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking. Marilyn, are you there?
Hello?
There you are.
Oh, hello everyone. My name is Marilyn. I would first like to start with saying that this fellowship was such a great opportunity for a lot of DACA recipients like myself, because it gave us the opportunity to experience what it's like to work in local government. Also, this fellowship helped me and many fellows to build a network with many people who worked in the county that has been doing such a great job already. And having these workshops that were provided for us during the program was also such a great way for us to help understand the program a little better. It also allowed us to provide help for many communities who are struggling now with COVID during these really difficult times. And it also helped me to realize that I would really like to work for the county one day, because I'm seeing how much work they put into it, and the work they put into it as well. And giving an opportunity for a DACA recipient like myself and to work in these communities really helped me to see that there's a lot of work that needs to get done. And with this program, it helped me a lot to help those who really need it. Thank you.
And that concludes our speakers.
Thank you. And I'll thank the public speakers and also the presenter. And now I'll turn to Dave.
Thanks, Supervisor Chavez. Actually, obviously this is just a celebration every time we get one of these reports, it seems like, of a great program that really the whole county has embraced. And not only has the whole county embraced the program, it's embraced our dreamers, embraced supporting DACA recipients, embraced supporting DACA recipients in their reapplications, fought the Trump administration on, the takeaways all the way to the highest court in the land. So, this is, all, to me, all part of the same continuum, doing this work. And so I don't know that you've actually presented here before on this. So
Haven't, first time.
Yeah, welcome.
Thanks, thank you. And I actually forgot to introduce Elizabeth also, who was going to participate with me in the presentation. So if we have a minute or a few seconds to hear from her, that'd be great.
Yeah, through the chair, I think that's fine. Let me just conclude my remarks then before you transition over and just say, Mario Lopez, who left the county for a while after, kind of inventing this program as a DACA recipient himself, who was working on the 10th floor in my office at the time, left the office. He came back now. He's working the last couple of months in my office here, during my transition out of the county. So I just want to give him a shout out since he's in the building, as they say, for his role. Oftentimes, as Supervisor Chavez and I know, and as most people in the county know, great support people, great staff people come up with, great thoughts. And sometimes they're ones, frankly, that should have been obvious all the time. Why aren't we doing this? Sometimes that's how the conversation starts. Why aren't we doing this? Why don't we do this? So thank you to everyone that's been involved. And I hope, the program, I guess we will all really be celebrating if this program continues for years and years and years to come, because it'll mean that our dreamers have been protected for years and years to come. So thank you for that.
Elizabeth, briefly, you want to weigh in?
Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Hernandez, and I was part of the New Americans Fellowship 2020 cohort. As a DACA recipient, I have to struggle with fear and uncertainty of what will happen with my future and professional development. During the fellowship, I was able to learn about many different topics and resources available to DACA recipients and undocumented immigrants. Some of them were public charge, taxes, community organizations willing to help immigrants. I also learned how to do a research project, data analysis, and my critical thinking improved as well. The healing circles were amazing. They helped me stay healthy, not only physically, but mentally as well. I was lucky to meet our main leaders of Santa Clara County. It was nice to know that we have their support, but mainly that they believe in all of us. Thank you to the New Americans Fellowship, I became an ambassador to the undocumented immigrant community, and I was able to share all the different resources available for them. I also became more confident of myself. Today, I could stand before you unafraid, and this is the main reason why is it important to continue this New American Fellowship, because I know there are many DACA recipients that struggle every day with their mental health, and many are also afraid, just like I was. Thank you to the Office of Immigrant Relations for their support and for making this happen.
Elizabeth, beautifully done. Thank you. Really, really well done.
Sure, Chavez, just to be 100% inclusive, in my own office, Kevin Lee, one of our staff persons, District 3, has been very directly involved with the program as well. So I wanted to just acknowledge his efforts. Thank you.
Yeah, and Kevin worked with me too. We've all been getting an opportunity to work with all of you. Thank you very much for the report, and congratulations to all of you for your good work. Thank you. We're going to go to item 12, which is recruitment and retention of the LGBTQ community. And as we turn to that, Dave, I'm just reflecting on the number of offices that have been created, including the Office of Immigrant Relations, the LGBTQ Affairs Office, and a number of others that I know that you played a leadership role in. And I was just thinking about that. I know Ken did a press conference today with some of our county leaders, and just a reminder of the really good work of you and others for a very long time. So thank you for that. So we're turning item 12. Sarah, are you the presenter today?
Supervisor Chavez, President Chavez, this is Maribel Martinez. I'll begin with some short remarks and then hand it over to Sarah for the presentation.
Thank you.
So again, Maribel Martinez, Manager for the Office of LGBTQ Affairs. Since the inception of the office, transgender communities were the intended beneficiaries of the work of the Office of LGBTQ Affairs. And fittingly, we created staff positions to safeguard and focus this work. Although we had some time delays in permanently staffing the position, we're happy to report that the work is well underway with the hiring of Sarah Fernando as the Senior Management Analyst leading these efforts. As an office, we acknowledge that this presentation is one step forward, but that will need continued lifting across these efforts. We are committed to centering transgender, non-binary, gender diverse, and gender fluid communities. As someone who identifies as queer and two-spirit, I personally want to underscore the urgency of this work, especially now as it includes the impacts of COVID-19 and our economic state. I will now turn it over to Sarah Fernando, who will present the slide deck. And I also want to note that Daniel Moretti is also available on the call. Daniel is the PM1 in our office and has been handling the day-to-day operations while I continue to serve at the county's Emergency Operations Center. So Sarah, please begin the slide deck presentation.
Sure, and I'm just making sure that you folks could see the slide deck on screen.
Sarah, thanks.
Awesome, thank you so much. And I'm super delighted to be able to bring this work to you today. Such an amazing place to be in, to be able to uplift the trans, non-binary, and gender diverse community and see the work that's been already happening and be able to continue to elevate and build on the success so far. So today what we're going to be talking about is recommendations, or a set of recommendations for transgender, gender non-conforming, non-binary, and gender diverse recruitment and retention. And the recommended action was for the expansion and recruitment for the retention efforts and the recruitment efforts for transgender, non-binary, non-conforming, and gender diverse employees, applicants, and contractors, giving specific recommendations and prioritization to the recruitment and retention efforts of trans women. And to give a little bit of an update in terms of how we got here. When we had our last CSFC meeting, since then, around 5 of our 7 staff members have been deployed to do disaster services or emergency operations work. So right now, as Maribel mentioned, it's only myself and Daniel. Also in 2019, and starting in 2019 and throughout 2020, we do have a transgender needs assessment. So the work that's regarding the transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse community and seeking what services are needed here locally is still being done. And it looks like we'll have that report by the end of this year. Of course, in May 2020, I was hired on as Senior Management Analyst, so super delighted to be here. And in September 2020, we also launched our transgender resource mapping, and the mapping is meant to locate and identify the transgender leadership resources and individuals that could help elevate trans equity and social justice here within County of Santa Clara. Now, in terms of the methodology we use in creating our baseline understanding, in our analysis, what we wanted to evaluate was the barriers that may hinder transgender, non-binary, or gender diverse employees and applicants from successfully navigating systems for recruitment, hiring, onboarding, and promotions and retention. And this also included looking at County of Santa Clara transgender policies, programs, even pipelines to employment, and available diversity and inclusion trainings. So some of the methodologies that we used. Since coming on, we've been doing and conducting an ongoing review of inclusive policy, an analysis of transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse programs and processes. One of the highlights and a lot of the stuff that's going to be informing these recommendations that we're outlining is based on a transgender recruitment and retention survey that was released at the end of July 2020, and we'll see the results of that soon. And also in August 2020, we, in collaboration with ESA, we also conducted community roundtables to seek the recommendations and get feedback from local community transgender leaders. So a little bit about some of the data and a little bit of the summary from this survey that we had. We had a total around 925 participants from vendors and from employees. And the majority of the participants were employees with 874. In terms of the number of LGBTQ, so lesbian, gay, bisexual, and queer participants, we had a good amount with around 24%, 233 to be exact, and around 88 identifying as trans, non-binary, or gender diverse. Some of the questions that were asked during this survey was regarding misgendering in the workplace, experience of negative or discriminatory treatment, barriers or challenges when it comes to the hiring process, barriers or challenges when it comes to working at or with County of Santa Clara, and how inclusive and welcoming County of Santa Clara is when it comes to the trans, non-binary, or gender diverse communities. Some of the key takeaways that we have. So like I mentioned, around 24% of folks that took the survey identified as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or queer. And around 9.5% identify as trans, non-binary, intersex, agender, or gender diverse. Some of the surprising numbers that stood out to me was non-binary folks. They made up 4.5% of the survey, which means that there is a larger presence of non-binary folks that work for County of Santa Clara, as well as for transgender women, and cluing into some of the recommendations that were made earlier that made this, this board referral. It is true that transgender women make up a very small minority of group of folks that work at County of Santa Clara. So 0.7% according to the respondents. So again, this is according to the respondents. Survey respondents, specifically transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse respondents, identified implicit bias implicit bias specifically to and gender expression bias during interviews, pressure to conform, lack of safety within government offices, and even a negative hiring experience when it comes to working for County of Santa Clara or working with. Transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse information and training was also seen as lacking by some of our respondents. And to date, there's really no specific transgender policy to protect trans, non-binary, and gender diverse folks and make them feel safe within the workplace. So in putting an equity and social justice lens within the work that we were doing, we categorize our recommendations to intentionally impact implicit bias within County of Santa Clara and strengthen community relations through equitable hiring practices. So when we talk about impact internal and existing workforce and strengthen community relations, this specifically speaks to implicit bias and seeing what opportunities and what gaps we have when it comes to hiring trans, non-binary, and gender diverse folks. Then, in terms of empowering the community and seeing what we could do to attract top talent, our recommendations also work towards building a pipeline as recommended in prior CSFC meetings, and strengthening local partnerships within County of Santa Clara. With that being said, here are 5 recommendations that we have. So number 1, explore transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse related implicit bias and workplace diversity training for all County of Santa Clara employees. 2, draft administrative policy to ensure transgender employees feel safe and welcome in the workplace. 3, expand hiring efforts to be inclusive of the transgender community. 4, draft framework for transgender inclusion fellowship program. And 5, increase support for a partnership with transgender-led organizations and leaders. So let's get into some of these recommendations. So recommendation number 1, explore implicit bias and workplace diversity training. So one of the questions that we asked within our survey was, how inclusive and welcoming is the environment of County of Santa Clara as an organization for trans, non-binary, and gender diverse folks? So across the entire survey, 925 participants, right? Majority of respondents cited towards neutral and inclusive and welcoming, right? But when we just separate those out from trans, non-binary, and gender diverse folks, those numbers increase towards not being inclusive and welcoming, or not at all being inclusive or welcoming. So in terms of statistics, folks that identify as trans, non-binary, or gender diverse don't feel as included or as welcome as their cisgender peers. And what a lot of the respondents said within this survey pointed to training and education as a key focal point in making a diverse, inclusive, and welcome environment. So with our recommendations, our priority recommendation is continued exploration of LGBTQ-related implicit bias and workplace diversity trainings for all County of Santa Clara employees. And we know that their efforts are underway with a Equal Opportunity Department and Racial Equity Champions of Change Committee. But what we're looking here is to see where we can include an intersectional lens. So we see race as very vertical within the work that we're doing right now. And we want to create it more horizontal to make room for gender, make room for gender expression, sexual orientation, all sorts of identities that should be considered when we talk about implicit bias, right? So when we're doing implicit bias explorations, we want to make sure that it includes a very intersectional lens on top of the work that we're doing. Also, and this is me being fairly new to the county, and exploring a lot of the opportunities and a lot of the tools that we have available, within SCC Learn, there's something called unconscious bias. And for me, that has taken a lot of unconscious bias and implicit bias trainings. I found this very useful. And it's heartbreaking to see that something like this isn't amplified as much as it should be. So we worked with learning organizations to see what we could do to promote. And we're going to continue to work with learning organizations to see how we could amplify this training. And it's a bundled training. It's around a 2-hour course, but it's so useful, so imperative in the work that we do. And even me, looking at this work, even though it's not LGBTQ specific, it still hits across multiple identities and it keys in on implicit bias. Again, very useful training that if I were to make the decision, I would make it highly recommended, if not required. It is essential training. On top of that, we also have Building a More Inclusive Workplace LGBTQ that Office of LGBTQ Affairs has made accessible. However, what we're looking to do is make this training more accessible by partnering with Cognito, Learning Org, and other stakeholders to have this available and SCC Learn. So we're looking to have this available and accessible for all county employees to be able to have access to. For recommendation number 2, drafting policy to ensure transgender employees feel safe and welcome. One of the key questions that we had here was regarding negative treatment in the workplace. So employees were asked, have you experienced any of the following forms of negative or discriminatory treatment based on your gender identity or gender expression during your employment? And nearly 19% of employees had some form, and we're talking about all participants, right? All employees of County of Santa Clara, all that responded to the survey at least. But within those 19% that responded to having negative or discriminatory treatment, around 36% identified as LGBTQ and 17% identified as trans, non-binary, or gender diverse. And some of the pieces of negative treatment included being excluded from activities, having negative comments said about your appearance, denied promotion, policy violations. And when it comes to policy violations, that includes revealing previous gender to others, looking into the background on social media, and or publishing or even talking about personal background without any kind of consent. So around 17% of trans, non-binary, gender diverse felt some form of negative or discriminatory treatment. And in terms of what that looked like, this is how it looked like. And this is comments taken directly from the survey itself, from trans, non-binary, or gender diverse folks. So lack of training and lack of information in terms of lack of pronouns being respected, lack of increased professional training on gender bias and homophobia. Even when it comes to supporting the transgender community, there's a lack of information in terms of policy, in terms of just general guidance. So if someone comes out as trans, it's pretty difficult to find the resources needed to successfully transition within the workplace. Now, in terms of feeling welcome, safe, or comfortable in the workplace, we do have some data and some quotes that point to being unwelcome, unsafe, and uncomfortable within the workplace. So people choosing not to disclose their gender identity for fear of either being asked invasive questions or for fear to having to explain it to people. This is something where folks feel uncomfortable of just living authentically in the workplace. Then we also have some respondents that are out in the workplace, but are just made to feel uncomfortable. So one comment that spoke out to me was, I am made to feel very uncomfortable. I am blamed for others' reaction to me. And in terms of what we could do to make folks feel safe and included in the workplace, we're recommending drafting transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse inclusive policy. Now, this is going to be an administrative policy, and we would recommend that it be easily accessible through our Connect portals, through employee onboarding, and through job postings. One best practice I saw is San Mateo County. When you just Google San Mateo County transgender policy, it comes up as one of the first searches. And for us in County of Santa Clara, one of the biggest populations here in the Bay Area, we should be able to be as cutting edge and as accessible to be able to find this information, because if trans folks want to find out a little bit more about how inclusive we are, having that policy and being able to find it is crucial to being able to retain and recruit trans folks within County of Santa Clara. For our third recommendation, it's expanding hiring efforts to be inclusive of the trans community and considering the baseline that we have. So again, around 7 folks that took the survey identified as transgender female or born female or born male, but identify as female. Whereas non-binary, again, 42 folks that took the survey identified as non-binary. And taking that baseline in terms of where we are and how many folks we have within county that identify as trans, non-binary, or gender diverse, we asked survey participants to identify some of the barriers. And according to the qualitative data, some folks said that During the recruitment process, there's a lack of targeted outreach for the LGBTQ community, perceived bias towards candidates that fit a certain general, job postings only available on select websites, so not necessarily diverse websites, and an inability to identify within a gender category not listed in the application. And during interviews, and this is based on lived experience, visible discomfort from interview panelists when interviewing the candidate that's there, or there's not even an opportunity for the hiring manager to understand or know the pronouns before going into the interview. And according to some of the data from our transgender roundtable, other opportunities include applications not allowing to submit under two names, so, you know, current name and former name, and a lack in a field for a name that's listing another name under the legal docs that might be under. So, in partnership with Employee Services Agency, some of the key commitments that they are looking into are the following. So, diversity advertising with careers in government, human resource training academies, diversity, equity, and inclusive hiring practices, implicit bias training, GARE participation, and industrial psychologist contracts. So in working with ESA, what we would like to do with ESA is this continued ongoing partnership to ensure that we're there to be able to make recommendations and advise on and see where we can lean in to support trans inclusive hiring efforts. Now, so we talked about creating a diverse and inclusive workforce for transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse community members, right? And in terms of what I'm excited about, and this is what I find really cool, going right after Office of Immigrant Relations, is that what we're looking to do in recommendation number 4 is to draft framework for a transgender inclusion fellowship program. So what we're looking to do is create a framework that will give prospective employees a chance to work with County of Santa Clara. And for the Transgender Inclusion Fellowship Program, this goes towards folks that want to do work within transgender inclusion. Now, in terms of drafting this framework, we're looking to partner with these key organizations. So with Employee Services Agency, we're looking for support when it comes to budget, community outreach, vetting, and other key components. Office of Immigrant Relations, we look to as our guiding light, so key mentors within this kind of recommendation to see where we could get guidance, mentorship, because they have a work plan that's so robust. And with NAF 2020 now wrapping up, as we saw today, it's crucial that we partner with them and see what worked, what didn't work, and see how we can make this possible for trans folks that want to work within trans inclusion to be able to work with county and see county as a viable employer, right? And last but not least, county council. We feel county council is very important, very crucial with the work that we do. With some of the outlining propositions that are out there, seeking legal guidance whenever we need it, we feel would be beneficial towards making this kind of fellowship. In terms of the vetting process, applicants to the fellowship would submit a personal statement with selection committee who would consider, along with interest and commitment to LGBTQ issues and personal or leadership qualities, future goals, and see what we could do to make sure that they're part of this inclusion fellowship program. And this, based on the vetting process and everything that's outlined, again, a lot of the key points and the missions that was outlined with the NAF fellowship, we lifted up. So thank you again, Office of Immigrant Relations, but transformational leadership, critical policy analysis and action, and decision-making. These are the outcomes that we're looking to have with a Transgender Inclusion Fellowship program here at County of Santa Clara. And upon completion, a lot of the key competencies build on positive impact and learning and growing and being able to mentor future fellows with here in County of Santa Clara. And last but not least, the fifth recommendation is really to increase support for transgender-led organizations and leaders. And we could signal our solidarity with the trans, non-binary, or gender diverse community by ensuring that we partner with these organizations that could help us elevate equity within the trans, non-binary, and gender diverse community. Based on some of the data from our community roundtable, slow, sterile work environment, resistance to change, lack of transgender, non-binary, or gender diverse inclusive healthcare, lack of safety and security, and an expectation to conform to a straight cisgender heteronormative government work culture. All these are reasons why some of the folks that participated in the community roundtable, they felt that county's not right for them, which is totally valid just because of the fact that when we compare the roundtable results from the survey results, a lot of them have common themes. So we feel that transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse leaders are likely to prioritize and address issues that are real to them. And to show you a little bit of proof, like I said before at the beginning, some of the work that we have going on with transgender resource mapping, that's being held by Lita Vala, seen here, right? In terms of a transgender needs assessment, that's being helmed by Danielle Castro. And even with the Gender Health Center that we've created here at County of Santa Clara, we have a Jules Chaitin Brennan who's leading and is the medical director for such a cutting edge type of health center for the trans, non-binary, or gender diverse communities. So again, we recommend increasing support for transgender-led organizations and leaders as a means for cultivating transgender, non-binary, or gender diverse talent, and seeing that as a potential bench, or even seeing what their interest is in working for County of Santa Clara. Because when we empower folks within the community and we show our solidarity with the folks that are doing the real work, then we could create a lot more spaces and a lot more interest for trans, non-binary, or gender diverse folks to want to work for County of Santa Clara. So again,
Thank
our
you.
call, oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm gonna, go through your last slide and then we're gonna go to the public and then we're gonna weigh in. Thank you.
Sure thing. So really quickly, our call to action is to prioritize implicit bias training and workplace diversity training, establish model transgender employment policy, continually improve transgender recruitment and retention efforts, create a pipeline to employment, and partner with transgender-led organizations and leaders.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
We're gonna go to public comment and then we'll come back to the committee for discussion.
The next speaker is Roxanne. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this chance to address you, and I know that this is an attempt to step in the right direction, but I have to point out the elephant that's in the room here. The organization is leading this survey. I had to push for 4 years to get them to even interview trans women. And so now they've added 2 trans women, but the very study they're doing is erasing my community. They're throwing trans women in with gender diverse and cis people, and that is a process of elimination of my community. And obviously they allowed whoever wanted to put down that they were trans women, because at 0.07%, nobody is going to stand up and argue there are 1,610 trans women employed by this county. And so we know that the only trans women that are been hired by the county are in this one department. And they're very, very recent hires, and it's taken 4 years of pushing to even get us interviewed. So now what I'm really asking both of our supervisors to consider is to have either a meeting, a letter, some directive from the command level, from your level, to the ranking department members. Doing all this survey stuff at the bottom level is not going to make a change, because right now we have a sheriff and we have a county council who's going to federal court against me to argue that it is all right. It is all right in 2021 to throw trans women in the male section of the jail. That's indefensible. So, you know, Ms. Martinez's office comes in here and makes this nice presentation, but the reality is the direct.
That concludes our speakers.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to the board for comments and discussion. And Dave, I'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Supervisor Chavez. First of all, I appreciate the thoroughness of the report, and I know that from an administrative standpoint, not just you, Sarah, but through the county executive's office, there was a desire to do a broad-based survey and a broad-based support across all of the demographics that you reported on today. I would acknowledge, especially in terms of the public speaker who just spoke, Roxanne, I believe, that the referral, if you take a close look at it, does emphasize a particular focus on the trans community and trans women. I believe the language was trans women in particular, but I don't recall the exact words. I don't have it in front of me right now. And as we went through the slides, even though you got to a pretty good deep dive into recommendations around recruitment or hiring, it does seem like that is the biggest question. It was certainly the reason we brought the referral forward. That I think a pretty well-founded assumption that we were disproportionately low in terms on the hiring side. Let me just say, I do appreciate the emphasis on recruitment, and a lot of the presentation was on recruitment. And certainly the last thing you want to do is hire and then have people feeling that it's not a welcoming or inclusive environment or an equitable environment and then just leave. That's that would probably be the worst case scenario. But I do think it merits now that we've had this report, Supervisor Chavez, just asking for a continued report back on recruitment progress on the trans side, because I think it's just a lot of boxes have been checked off here, and I mean that in a good way. A lot of questions have been answered, a lot of thoroughness, as I said. I mean, this is great baseline information for the most part. Because after being here 11 and a half, almost 12 years, I still see people on the elevator who I feel like I should know and I don't know, and I don't know their names and I don't know their background. I certainly don't know their demographics. I don't know anything about their sexual orientation or anything like that. So 22,000 county employees are a lot of people to keep track of, and I guess arguably there's one side of the equation that would say we don't want to keep registries or keep track of personal information unless people are willing to give it. So I'm not sure we're going to know if 0.07% is a good number or a bad number. I don't blame the speaker. I don't blame Roxanne for being concerned about that number because there's a part of me that says that seems like it could be off, could be wrong. But I think the way to get to it is not to try to draw a conclusion here or to go by anything anecdotal, but to figure out how to get it right and how to get the recruitment where it should be, because it should, in an equitable world, it should be proportionate and appropriate, and it should not be in any way, of course, exclusive. So I think the jury's still out a little bit on that question, is what I'm saying. Supervisor Chavez, I don't know, you're always pretty good at figuring out how to take a next step like that, and I also know that you're going to be in a better position to oversee any future information than I will be. So I want to pause for your comments.
Well, first, Dave, thank you. And let me just acknowledge one point that Roxanne made that I think is important, and that is that, and actually I should ask you this, Maribel, how long have you been with us?
At 4.5 years.
Just 4.5, okay. Doesn't seem like it was just yesterday, but these are all really relatively new offices. And I do think one point that Roxanne's raising, and I sometimes feel like this as well, that when we're pushing an organization to do new things, that when the organization finally starts to do new things, not acknowledging that we have had a challenge is part of the problem, because then it makes people feel like the folks who got our attention feel like we weren't listening. And so I just want to say we heard you, for sure. And the second thing I wanted to say is I really love the framework. I think the 5 areas, with the last one's a little more fuzzy, and I want to think about that one. But I think that here's a recommendation I would like to make. One, well, there are 2 parts to it. One is, I think we are going to need some extra help to think about how to dig into our own workforce, and frankly, how to have a conversation with the broader community to really seek out the thoughts of the transgender community. And this initial survey is a great way to start. And now that we have some granules, I think that's going to help us figure out how to work on this. And my recommendation would be is that we're not only looking at the county of Santa Clara, but that we're doing county-wide surveys, because part of how we understand the community is understanding the community in its entirety, then understanding the community in the county, and what we can do as a county to achieve all the goals that were raised, and really the primary one being a welcoming, wonderful place for people to work, and that people seek us out, that we're the employer that people want to come work for, and that they know this is a safe place to work. So that's kind of like one body. But the other, is part of the overall work of the office, is really understanding the complexities of the communities we represent. You know, when we, just to be blunt about this, when we were very first thinking about, or at least when I was thinking about the Office of Immigrant Relations as a office, one of the things that I was really learning at the time was how diverse the community is, and that, you know, we often think of diversity, and folks who come from other places are often surprised at how diverse we are and what our diversity looks like, right? Because they'll say, oh, like I've had people come and say, where are your Black folks? You know, where are your, but in our community, like we have this huge Asian community, and we use the term Asian when we have cultures that are so dissimilar, but we are still using that aggregate language. Anyway, and I feel like that's true with the LGBTQ community too as well, that we have to just dig in. So anyway, I love the direction. I'm going to recommend as part of a motion that we ask for the Office of LGBTQ Affairs to have some additional resources if necessary, to get some additional help in doing a deeper drill down of polling. And I don't think it should just be internal. I think we should be looking county-wide to look at how to do focus groups and other things, because I think it's really important that we understand in our community, how big is the community? How open is the community to talking to us? Does the community know what services we have available? There are just a lot of questions that we need to ask. So that's one thing. The second thing I would recommend is that this should come to the Board of Supervisors, but what I would attach to it is a timeline for like as a work plan, so that there's a very transparent way we can look and say, here's the body of work we're doing, here are the outcomes over what timeline that we think we can achieve them. Because I think that as it relates to the particular task ahead of you, that the opportunity to be transparent is also an opportunity to engage people, because folks on their own accord can come and look at our website. They can reach out to you. The more information we put out, the more people will understand what opportunities and roles there are for them. And I think we should do it also with that timeline, have a presentation for the board. I'm going to suggest it be a little more, you know, like as you present this to the board, that the leading product is the work plan and the timeline, right? So people know what to expect from the group, and also try to answer the very important question about how we do that deeper level of outreach, because that's going to be I think a question that continues to be on the minds of the board, and frankly on the minds of the community. Does that sound, any concerns about what I just raised or thoughts? You're all good? Dave, what do you think? Is that all right?
Yes, good. I think it's important to make sure they have the resources to do that work. And it's obviously a lot of work.
Yeah, and especially given that over half of them are in the EOC, which is where I can see Maribel right now as we speak. So, so great. All right. So with that, we'll make a motion to that effect. Supervisor Cortese, would you like to make that motion, and I'll second it?
Yes, I'll move the report plus including or incorporating the comments that each of us made in terms of continued direction, particularly yours with regard to resources and the Board of Supervisors report.
Great. And I'll make that as a second, and I'll just say thank you to all of you. This is exciting work, especially given that you did this all through a pandemic. And welcome aboard, Sarah, in your new job. And Daniel, thank you for being with us.
And I want to say thank you to Roxanne and people like Roxanne, that, you know, this is generally how we do oftentimes begin change processes. The best ideas, the best movements come from the community itself. And, you know, I just want to make sure that we're acknowledging that a lot of this work started out in the community and got brought into the county. So we're on our way. We'll go through some growing pains. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Maribel and Daniel and Sarah. Thank you. All right. So we're going to go on to item 13. And this is the Social Services Director. And then to item 14. And that is the Department of Child Support Services. Sorry. I have had coffee. I have literally no excuse. All right. We'll start with Robert.
All righty. So good afternoon. It's good to see everybody. Wanted to give an update on the CalFresh program as it relates to the Lightning Complex fires. When those happened, there was a federal declaration of disaster in many counties, but initially there was some problems with having Santa Clara County designated as a disaster area. So there was follow-up work to get that squared away. And once that happened, we did some follow-up with the state and USDA to get disaster CalFresh benefits approved for our county. And early last week, we got news from USDA that they are approving that. So what that means essentially is it affects two populations. One, if you are currently a CalFresh recipient and impacted by the fires. So that can be something as simple as you had to evacuate and be out of your home, and let's say power was lost and you lost your food as a result of that, you could potentially be eligible. For current recipients, what that means is two things. One is that if you receive anything lower than the actual monthly maximum benefit, you can be eligible to be raised up to that level. And if you had any loss of your foods, you can also be eligible for replacement benefits. An important note in this case is that this also has eligibility for folks who weren't receiving CalFresh at the time. And if you had disaster-related expenses that really do affect your income during the disaster period, due to home or business repairs, temporary shelter expenses, evacuation, loss or no access to income during that period, you could potentially be eligible for these disaster related CalFresh benefits. There will be a pre-screening period that will open next week, and that will be conducted through via telephone. And then the actual application period will be for roughly the first 10 days of November. So we just wanted to give that update that there is.
Bob, how does that get out to the public?
So it can get out via us. It also gets out via the state. The state has a communications plan that they broadcast that out. And it's also incumbent just, as us as an agency, but us as a county to get that information out.
I would just ask if you can, if you guys pre-do something that the board can get out to all of its newsletters, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. And that was it. Happy to take any other questions.
I don't have any further questions. Thanks. Just a comment of thanks to everyone in the administration that worked on the FEMA designation. I know somebody did an awful lot of work to get the minimum qualifying numbers tallied up in a short period of time. And there's a lot of people that are grateful for that out there, no matter how large or small, their issue may be. And there's still people that are not entirely clear that, that exists. I talked to a constituent a few days ago who wasn't even sure that the roads back to Mount Hamilton were open yet. And this is somebody that actually has a small property back there and was worried about damage. And, I know there's been some facilities set up, orientation programs and things like that for members of the public also to get their side of it taken care of. And but anyway, thanks to everyone, cross agency, cross department that were involved in getting that done. I know Supervisor Chavez stepped away for a moment, so I'll chair for a few minutes as we go forward. But thanks again, Bob. And we'll go now to the Department of Child Support Services report, I think is next, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
That is correct.
We have a representative here today from.
I'm here. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I'm Regina, filling in for Ignacio today.
Okay, Regina, we're prepared to hear any report that you have, and Supervisor Chavez is connected by audio. She'll be back in a few minutes. In fact, there she is, right on cue.
All right. This is going to be really quick. I just wanted to briefly report out on our year-to-date federal fiscal year performance in terms of our collections this year. Of course, our caseload has reduced. We're down to 28,656 cases. However, our total collections, I'm talking about payments processed, was $100,747,644 this year. This is the first time in over 15 years that the department has collected over $1 million in child support payments for families. And so that's a huge amount of money. We're up 8.8% from what we collected during the same time last year. And so in terms of our county ranking, our large county ranking, Santa Clara County came in number 2 in terms of performance for the year. And then our overall statewide ranking is 27. And that's in comparison to all the other counties. And that's taking into consideration all of the federal performance measures that are handed down from the feds and the state. So that's it for me, unless there are any questions.
Dave, do you have any questions?
No, none for me. Thank you. Thanks for the report.
Yeah, Regina, I had one question. Have the new cases dropped because people just can't get to you, or?
Actually, it's a statewide trend. If you look at all up and down the state, the caseloads are dropping. I mean, we believe that there's a segment of the population that just does not need our services or does not want our services. And so that would be, we're talking about those folks who may have worked out agreements with the other parent, and so they're paying one another directly without involving the local child support agencies. And then in terms of children, you know, children are aging out, they're emancipating. So, you know, larger families, they're not having as many children as they were before, but there are certainly children out there that still need our services. But in terms of why it's happening, I can't really pinpoint one particular reason, but there are a lot of thoughts on why this is happening. And as I stated before, you know, one is that there's a segment of the population that doesn't need our services, and then, you know, it is a statewide trend that, you know, it's just going down statewide. One of the things I will tell you this, and I was looking at, for example, San Joaquin County, and I noticed that we used to be basically the same with them, but their caseload has managed to stay the same. And I attribute most of that to the fact that it's cheaper to live there. So folks are moving that direction and moving away from here because it's a little more expensive to live here. So, you know, folks live there. And then there's another school of thought too, and that when you have parents who are incarcerated, like a father, for example, usually the rest of the family will move closer to that individual. So San Joaquin County, Stanislaus County, those places have prisons. And so you'll see more families with small children move to those areas.
Well, thank you for that. That's very helpful.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you. So we're going to move on to FGOC. We're going to item 15, and this is the audit of the Department of Corrections.
Good afternoon. This is Cheryl Solov with the Board's Management Audit Division. It's at your pleasure, Madam Chair, would you prefer that I provide an overview of the audit and then move into the recommendations, or do you want to move to the recommendations?
Could you do an overview, and then I'll go through the recommendations. Thanks.
Yes. So this was an audit of the Department of Correction, which is sort of unusual in that it is there is a chief of the Department of Correction, but there is also involvement of the Sheriff's Office as well, because budgetarily, and we conducted the audit budgetarily, the two functions are within the same budget unit. So just to clarify why we have two different parties responding to this. But to provide an overview, there are 7 findings and 15 recommendations. All of the recommendations were either agreed to or partially agreed to, with the exception of one, which was disagreed with by the Superior Court. So in terms of the findings, the 7 areas were, there was a 2017 erroneous release of a county inmate. And so we had a recommendation to modify the court's minute orders to make it less likely that another errant release could occur. In section 2, we had a finding about fixed assets and the need for developing and funding a fixed assets plan for the kitchen and laundry equipment. Section 3, we have a finding about returned inmate mail regarding the inmate returned inmate mail causing inmate confusion and recommendation that the DOC notify inmates with a receipt explaining reasons for return mail, as well as, what constitutes inappropriate mail coming into the facility. A similar recommendation in section 4, or similar finding, was related to detection of contraband in inmate mail. So our recommendation was to have the DOC require custody support assistance to attend the sheriff's deputy trainings on contraband evidence and screening and distribution of mail, among other recommendations. Section 5 of the audit addresses payments to inmates from undisclosed sources. And this relates to the commissary accounts that that are run in the jail for the benefit of inmates, and it addresses some concerns that we had about the ability of people who might not be the family or friends per se of inmates, but other parties to provide funds to inmates through these accounts. And section 6 addresses the lost inmate property. And we had sometimes inmate property becomes lost, and inmates are maybe moved around within the facility, and their property may become they may become separated from property either within the facility or after they leave. And so we have some recommendations about that. And then the final section is regarding vocational training program. There is an existing vocational training program for inmates, but our recommendation was to contract with a different vendor or establish a pilot apprenticeship program that could be a little bit more valuable to inmates who complete that program. And with that, I can go through individual recommendations or answer any questions that you may have.
Cheryl, what I'm going to do, if it's all right with Supervisor Cortese, is I'm going to go through them and make a recommendation, see what Dave thinks, and then I'll turn to Sheriff Smith. I'll turn to Sheriff Smith or Martha Wapinski or Cheryl to you to give comments if you would still like to, after we've made if the two of us have come to an agreement, if that's okay with everyone. So the first thing I want to say is we're going to, relative to the items 3.1, 3.2, 4.3, 6.1, 6.3, and 7.1, where there's full agreement with the audit, I want to recommend that we'll approve those and request a report back on the completion of those items in 6, 9, or 12 months, depending on the timeline that the item can be resolved. So obviously no longer than a year. For recommendation 1.1, that this is the one that states the Department of Correction should urge Santa Clara County Superior Court to modify its minute order. I understand that the Superior Court feels strongly that this doesn't need to change, but because the Department of Corrections and the Sheriff's Office agree, I want to recommend that we send a letter to them anyway and ask them to consider the change. Dave, are you comfortable with that?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. And since we can only recommend, might as well ask them. Then to go to item 2.1, this states the Department of Correction should establish a policy to require an assessment of the physical condition of each kitchen and laundry asset. The condition assessment should occur annually, and the results of the assessment should be reported to the Chief of Correction. The staff agrees on this, and And I'm not sure, I think these were all in agreement. So I want to request that the Department of Correction develop a policy for the assessment of the physical condition of each kitchen and laundry asset and report back in 6 months.
That's agreeable.
Okay. Any concerns about that, Martha or Cheryl or Sheriff Smith? Nope. Okay. On recommendation 2.2, this states that the Department of Corrections should develop and maintain a 5-year fixed asset plan and present the plan to the Board of Supervisors for approval annually. The plan may be a separate document, but should be integrated into the department's annual budget. The staff agrees in concept, and it sounds like this is a conceptual agreement. So what I would just want to recommend is, since it's conceptual, let's just have a report back in 6 months to look at the status of the recommendation. Okay. So Dave, you concur. Sheriff,
yep.
Any concern with that one? You're okay. Okay. Then for recommendations 4.1 and 4.2, let me just get myself over there. All right. So this one, there's a partial agreement. So let me just say what it is. The 4.1 states the Department of Corrections should require custody support assistants to attend Sheriff Deputy Academy trainings on contraband evidence and the screening and distribution of mail. And recommendation 4.2 states the Department of Corrections should copy custody support assistants on portions of the Sheriff's jail intelligent units pertaining to drug updates. For both recommendations, there's a partial agreement, and I don't entirely understand why it's partial.
Okay. So Supervisor, this is a sheriff, I can answer that. It's a partial agreement because absolutely they need the training, but that is really not part of what's taught in the basic academy. And when you say the academy, it shouldn't be part of the academy training, but it should be training.
Oh, I see. So right now it's not part of training now?
It is part of training, but this suggests that it be done, that the CSAs actually go to part of the basic academy training. I think that they need more specific individualized training that's not within necessarily the academy training.
Oh, got it. Okay, so then what I'll ask is if you can report back in 6 months on how you're handling the training, and that would be fine. And then how it's being integrated. I know you have a robust training program, so this will have to be layered in. That would be great.
Great.
Dave, is that okay with you?
Yeah, on the second thing, the intelligence sharing part, I wasn't really supportive of that at all, be honest with you. It just seemed like a little too much encroachment on traditional law enforcement privileged stuff. But the training, I actually thought it would be useful to have the custody support, at least have some, maybe it's orientation that's temporarily held at the academy, just some integration, some early integrations, because the same folks that come out of the academy are going to later, be working side by side with those folks. And it just, I think it's overboard to fully integrate them. That would be too, probably a mishmash of cultures and intentionality. But maybe if we're going to get this back in 6 months, like you say, Supervisor Chavez, the sheriff can at least give some more thought to maybe just some an appropriate level of minimal engagement or orientation for the custody folks, so that they get an opportunity to be better informed as to some of what's going on in the academy, and actually just meet the people. I just think it's appropriate for them to not be in two completely different universes.
Got it. Thanks. Sheriff?
Yes. Training at the academy is different than the training in the academy. The academy is a one-shot thing, and currently our custody support assistants go through regular ongoing training. And I do agree with Supervisor Cortese, absolutely, they should be integrated into into the training with the correctional deputies because they work so closely. And so there should be some kind of process, or probably is a process, where we, you know, they meet and work together. And actually they work together daily everywhere. So I agree with Supervisor Cortese.
Great. And then, so I think on the intelligence pertaining to drug updates, I think the intent here was to make sure that everybody who's on the premises understands what the emerging trends are. That's how I interpreted that. So could you include that as well in the report back? Because I don't think it means, you know, you're obviously going to do a good job of determining what information should or shouldn't be shared, but you even do that, frankly, with us when you're educating us about the challenges you're having in the jail. Is that all right? Yes? Okay. I see nodding. All right. Okay, item 5.1 states that the Department of Corrections should prevent fraternization between county inmates and correctional staff, immediately enact a policy that explicitly prohibits any DOC or sheriff's office staff member from giving money to inmates through any means. The sheriff, you all are responding that you have a policy in place, and I just want to ask that the policy that is in place be shared with the auditor and the board. Okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right, so that'll be shared. And can that be done this week? Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right, item 5.2. On item 5.2, this states the Department of Corrections should assign an existing DOC employee to regularly monitor and analyze all deposits into inmate money accounts for adherence to the policy and for suspicious patterns that may be indicators of illegal activity, and reporting any findings of potential illegal activity conducted through money accounts to the district attorney's office. I guess this is just a question for you. Sheriff, it sounds like you agree to this, but I'm not sure. I'm just not sure what I'm just not sure how you would do this, and if you're seeing already trends or problems now.
So on this, we don't regularly go through and audit the money transactions. If we were to do that, we need additional staffing, but we have done many investigations that have led to complaints being filed by the DA's office and arrests for these kinds of illegal transactions. We just don't do ongoing monitoring, but we do, when we have information, begin a criminal case, and we've done that many, many times.
Got it. So on this one, here's what I wanna ask you. If I'm not sure, and maybe I should ask Cheryl this, I'm not sure what prompted this as a concern. If we've seen some, and maybe you all, Sheriff, you've seen some pattern that I just hadn't heard quite of yet. But Cheryl, do you want to talk a little bit about what the concern is here?
Well, yeah, and to the sheriff's point, you know, when they say that they've had a number of successful criminal prosecutions related to this, and we know that there have been some like this, it does seem like it should be monitored as opposed to just waiting on a tip for, you know, some whistleblower to point it out, especially in an environment where there've been, according to what we just heard, many convictions related to this.
So, Sheriff, here's a thought, and Dave, tell me if you're comfortable with this. It appears to me that this may require the skill set of forensic auditing as, you know, as something that we occasionally rotate into your body of work overall. And so what I would be interested in recommending is that as part of the next budget item, and I would say not for November, because I realize we're putting a lot on November, but for the February budget. And Dr. Smith, I'm going to just say this out loud to you too, that we look at the budget augmentation that would be needed to do occasional but regular forensic audits. Maybe that's the way to approach this.
Okay, we'll do that.
Thank you. Sheriff, does that work?
Yes, it does. And when you're talking about a forensic audit, it would have to be done by the sheriff's office, because then we can access criminal history information and run names of people who are putting it on, or credit cards, and, you know, potentially get search warrants. So that kind of forensic audit would really have to be done from the criminal nexus. But yes, if that's the will of the board, generally money transactions all look normal until there's really information that shows something additional, not necessarily a whistleblower or anything like that, but even we will look at money transactions. If an inmate is getting a whole bunch of money all the time, we'll look at suspicious transactions now, independent of complaints. But other than that, you just see money going on and money being spent. So we do look for suspicious patterns, but not a regular auditing.
Dave, is it all right if we refer an audit process to the budget process for February?
Yes,
Okay.
I support that.
Thank you. All right. We're then going to go to item 6.2. And this is the Department of Corrections should add and fill one full-time office specialist to assist with processing and tracking claims at the county's facilities. The sheriff agrees. I think the question is this something that can be assigned to an existing staff person, or is another staff person necessary? And my recommendation on this, Supervisor Cortese, is that this be something that gets vetted through the budget process.
That's also fine. You mean, workshops or mid-year or both?
For February budget, so that there's opportunity for the sheriff and the administration to discuss and strategize that.
I was just asking, it sounds like the workshops in November will be to help inform the February adjustments. So I don't want to get that specific or not.
Yeah, I was hoping to have it ready for February. So whatever would facilitate it being ready for a February discussion is what I would request.
Okay, I support that.
Thanks, Jeff. Dr. Smith. Okay, item 6.4. The Department of Corrections should revise its policy manual to explicitly state that releasing officers must instruct inmates to look through all property physical inventory of the items on their pre-booking sheet, documenting any missing items before signing the property release. And Sheriff Smith, you said that you partially agree, and I was just wondering what was the partially not agreement?
I'm going to defer to Assistant Sheriff Davis sitting next to me on this one.
Great, thank
you. Good afternoon, Supervisor Chavez and Supervisor Cortese. Yeah, this is, the partially agree was that we can certainly implement a process. We've already begun discussions on how that would be best done. We can only offer the opportunity and educate those being released and encourage them to properly inventory against the inventory sheet So we partially agree that we certainly can put into place measures that would accomplish what is being sought here, but not necessarily change policy nor mandate the inmates review their inventory prior to release. It's certainly an option at that point, even still.
What would be, I'm not sure I understand the distinction or the implications of the option that you're raising.
Well, we can't force the inmates to physically inventory each item within their property bag prior to release. We can educate them and request that they do so prior to release, prior to signing the form of acceptance. So the recommendation was more specific to building in policies, which we can modify a policy that requires the release officer educate and request. We could put up signage at the release station so that the inmates can understand that we recommend that they review an inventory prior to signature, but we just can't mandate it. That was the biggest concern.
Got it. And is that because they're not in custody anymore?
Well, they are, exactly. They are at the release point. In those release stations, they can just grab and go if they choose.
Got it. Okay. What I would just request is, I like the idea of signage and a new procedural training. A procedure is what it sounds like. And what I would just want to make sure is that there's a new written procedure and a new, and that is some signage just to alert people that by the time they leave, it's hard to, I mean, I think one of the challenges is just hard to come back and then it's a whole nother set of activities.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay. So starting on page 9 of the audit, Harvey Rose identified several additional areas requiring further review, but there was not enough information or time that at the time that they completed the audit. So on page 10 of the audit, the report states that the DOC Food Services did not evaluate food menus for 2 years. And I'm not sure why that would be the case. But I wondered if you could talk just a little bit about what the challenge was there. Is this ringing a bell to anybody?
Supervisor, I think that would best fall under Martha Lipinski.
Oh, sorry, thanks. Martha?
Yeah, I don't have any additional information, any background on this, but I can certainly provide a report back.
Thank you. I think the area here is that we just want to make sure that one, we're keeping records on those menus, and two, that there's that we're evaluating those for health and all that other stuff that we're supposed to be doing. So Martha, if you could, when we do the 6-month check-in on the other initial issues, bring that one back would be great.
Yeah, we can do that.
On page 10, the report suggests the custody support assistant supervisors instruct all CSAs performing maintenance work to use a tool tracking sheet similar to the one used by contractors, and retaining these tracking sheets by date to maintain a record of who last used the tool. With this, I would like to request the DOC and Sheriff's Office just let us really provide an update on whether or not you found a tool, that you have a tool control policy.
We can. Supervisor, Assistant Sheriff Davis again. So yeah, we had implemented a tool tracking form that all staff escorting contractors coming into the facility would have to basically inventory the tools coming in, and they were also required to randomly check tool carts that are on the premises. Certainly it couldn't be 100% guarantee that something wouldn't come up because we would be doing some random audits after the initial entry, but that we had taken measures and created a form to accomplish that.
In 6 months, could you just, when we come back, just give us an update on how it's working? And I understand the point you're raising about I mean, it's a hard one. I feel like this is one of those things that it's a safety issue but it's also it's a lot because I know you have a lot of folks coming in and out, but that's almost the reason I'd want to understand what strategies are we using to make sure that people leave with everything they're supposed to, and no one's keeping anything they're not supposed to. So thank you for that. You know, this is one I actually don't really understand, and I'm going to read it to you because I was curious if you could give me the DOC's perspective on this. But the auditor suggests that the DOC review all its existing post orders, prioritizing post order development by unit, and draft these post orders according to a uniform template. And could you just discuss what that is? And I'm not sure who to look at for this. Is this Sheriff Davis?
Go ahead. Yes. So basically, this is, as I interpreted it, it's just requiring us to update our post orders as needed. Post orders, unlike policies, are day-to-day guidelines on how to perform a job in a specific position. So I believe that this request is more so just going through all of those post orders and updating them as needed, as many times over years, certain functions do change.
And so I guess just for clarity, one thing, and I'll say it because I know we're in transition, but it does seem like having a very uniform and consistent way of updating them is important, and also just for consistency. So could I ask that you just, again, within the 6-month time frame, just give us a report back on any adjustments you've made to the current process and the template that you're using? That'd be great.
Yes, we'll do that.
Thank you very much. Dave, were you comfortable with all those directions?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Good job.
Thank you. And Martha or Cheryl, is there anything you want to raise before we take a vote on this?
No, nothing else. Thank you.
Cheryl?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you all very much for rolling up your sleeves and working on this. We have no public speakers on this item, so we're going to get a motion from Supervisor Cortese.
So moved.
And a second from me, and there's no more discussion on that item. Thank you. Okay, now the last item on our agenda is the audit of the custody improvement recommendations. And this one, if you'll just hold on for 1 minute, because I got to switch out my binders. So, yes, I still use binders, everyone. I still read with paper. Let me just say what I'd like to do with this is I'd like to ask if Cheryl could just start with kind of a broad opening, and then I want to just talk a little bit about where I think there may be some confusion. And Dr. Smith, I may need you to weigh in on this. And then I want to talk about possible next steps. So Cheryl?
Thank you. So we were asked to conduct an audit of all of the Blue Ribbon Commission and associated entities recommendations for custody improvement. And we endeavored to do that based on the items that were the recommendations that had been reported to the Board of Supervisors as implemented. We spent a couple of years attempting to obtain information that we would need to verify or refute the assertion that the items have been implemented or that the recommendations have been implemented. And to a great degree, we were unsuccessful in obtaining that information. And so the board subsequently reallocated, we issued this document to just sort of wrap it up. And the board reallocated the hours to other projects on, and so a lot of what we endeavored to do, we were unable to complete due to a lack of information that was available to us to make the assessments that we were asked to make. And this is not related to our work per se, but I did see that maybe a few minutes or an hour, maybe it was, I don't recall, before this meeting began, there was a document posted as a supplemental to the item that purports to be a response to our recommendations, but in fact, it's the document purports that the Blue Ribbon Commission recommendations were our recommendations, which they are not. So I wanted to speak to that late ad because it does not pertain to any of our reports or recommendations. It's I just wanted to clarify that in case there's somebody out there who thinks that we're trying to usurp the Blue Ribbon Commission's recommendations, or that we made recommendations through the Blue Ribbon Commission, because we didn't. So in a few cases, we had identified some areas through our other work associated with the Sheriff's Office or the DOC audit where we felt we could say, yeah, we think this has been implemented, or we think it probably hasn't, but we weren't able to really come to anything definitive because we didn't have information.
Thank you. Martha, did you want to weigh in at all on this audit?
No, I didn't have anything to add.
Sheriff Smith?
Yes, briefly.
Yeah, first of all, let me offer my apologies to both Cheryl and Harvey Rose. That was a last minute submittal, and yes, I did rush the details, so I'm glad you clarified that, Cheryl. It is Blue Ribbon and not Harvey Rose. We understand that we were slow out the gate, to say the least, with regards to some of our responses in the past, but we are looking forward to remedying a lot of these issues, many of which have already been resolved over the past year or so. And keeping in mind, we had focused on the summarized recommendations as a committee, if you will. That's it.
So, and Dr. Day, you're new, but let me just say, so because that document came late, I apologize. I didn't have a chance to review it. I think we were in another meeting, but let me just say what my my very big concern is, and that is that, first of all, this is a really old audit, and the reason it's old is because for the years we've been trying to wrap this up, we haven't gotten consistent feedback or information from a number of departments. Department of Correction, Dr. Day, you weren't here, but Custody Health. And I think there has been also a little bit of a confusion and a disagreement between the CEO's office and the board on what we were supposed to audit. So let me just say what the initial intention of the audit was, as I recall it, because I think this was something that came out of this committee when Supervisor Simidian and I were still on it. And that was that we wanted to make sure we did one audit of all of the Blue Ribbon Commission recommendations, recognizing that some of them may have already been implemented. Some of them may just not have been good ideas. And, you know, and as was clarified for me earlier, some things a policy, not a, you know, that maybe you don't want to change it in this, but you want to change it in that. But we did not get consistent feedback from any party, including when my office convened people. So it's not just you weren't responding to Cheryl. I want to say to all of you, you weren't responding to the board. And here's the problem. The problem is the reason that we wanted to be able to look at all the Blue Ribbon Commission items was we wanted to be able to put to bed. There were some of them that, you know, we got recommendations from the commission. Some shouldn't have come to us. Some were going to behavioral health. I mean, there were a lot that needed to be placed somewhere. But we thought that as in honor of the work that the Blue Ribbon Commission did and that the FGOC did, that it was really important for us to wrestle those down, button them up, and then be honest about the things we couldn't move forward and things we did move forward, you know, laud and cheer, and those that would be work in progress for years, that we would do the work in progress for whatever amount of time. So here's what I think we should do. I think what we need to do is I think that that FGOC needs to that we can do this one of two ways. Either we can give it back to all of you to work on, or the board sits as FGOC, and we do one long day and we just go through all the items that are outstanding and wrestle each one to the ground. Because I think it's crazy that we've been chasing each other and trying to do meetings and not getting responses. I don't want to go to my board colleagues and say that even at the board's request, not just mine and Joe's, but the full board's request, we couldn't get this audit done. So I don't know how people are feeling about the best way to address it. I don't know that going back and forth with more paper is going to do it. I kind of feel like we all just need to sit in the same room. And Dr. Smith, you know, it would be imperative to me that also that Renee was here, because custody health is a part of the health system. What are your thoughts?
My thought is that it's probably better to have FGOC refer the issue to OCLIM, because I think most of the non-responsiveness has been from the sheriff's office. At least that's the way I read the report from Harvey Rose, and that would probably be a good job for OCLIM to do. I think if we, you know, it's fine to do a sit all together. That would be okay, but it's going to take a lot of time since there's so many complaints, or I mean, so many suggestions. But well, either way would be fine. I just think, you know, it's probably better to have somebody do the evaluation who has expertise in custody issues, rather than to have it done, you know, in a big group. But it's up to you.
You know, let me just say one other thing, and I don't know if, I don't think we have James on the phone, but let me just say that nobody was helpful. Like, county council wasn't helpful from my perspective. Behavioral, I mean, our health department wasn't helpful. I think people were just, I can't even, the problem with sending it to OCLIM is that we don't have an agreement between the sheriff and OCLIM right now. And I think that, just to be blunt, I think that you know, the auditor is an extension of the board, and if the auditor is having trouble getting information, I just think that's a conversation that we need to have at FGOC, so we can send it to the full board to have a discussion about what purview do our auditors get. And again, it wasn't just the sheriff's office, it was also our own other departments. I mean, these were other departments in the county that were not responsive. And like I said, some of it was health, some of it was council. I mean, I guess my point is that I really am not trying to point fingers. We have the Blue Ribbon Commission audit findings included behavioral health. There, I mean, it's like a lot of places that went. Sheriff, did you want to weigh in? I see
Yes,
a hand up.
Supervisor. First of all, let me apologize. Sheriff Smith had to step out. She has a radio inoperability meeting with Supervisor Wasserman at this time. But speaking on behalf of the Sheriff's Office, we would support Dr. Smith's recommendation to work closely with OIR on these Blue Ribbon recommendations, at least from the Sheriff's Office side.
And why would that be better than the audit, the process that we have in place?
Well, I'm not suggesting that it would be better. I'm just suggesting that you have one entity then that would liaise with all the different departments. And at this time, as you mentioned, we seem to be all over the place.
Well, we did have one. I mean, to be blunt, we had one department. I mean, we had one person, one group tasked with the audit. That was Cheryl. This is just a different group. I mean, and you know, but I understand your point. I mean, I guess maybe I don't. Sheriff.
Chair Chavez?
Yeah.
Okay. I continue to feel like, you know, even in the context of this audit, that a third party neutral needs to come in and try to work through some of these issues that does have legal training and experience. And I said something about that at the last board meeting, referring to the larger picture or the report back on Oakland itself. But each party here has certain interests, that, with the exception of the auditor. I mean, the auditor is giving us, as best as the auditor can do, a statement of what is right now, right? And the auditor is not a facilitator, a mediator, has no authority to require the parties to do anything, et cetera. It seems to me that from there on, you have, as you mentioned, OCOM in, although empowered by the board to do oversight, at, you know, openly in conflict with the sheriff about what should or should not be included in information sharing. We have the county executive's office, which is actually responsible for a bunch of the custody improvement recommendations, separate and apart from the sheriff. And, you know, to me, one of the most alarming issues is, at least the auditors, you know, information in this report that such a small percentage of recommendations have actually been implemented. Now, maybe that's because it's dated information or something like that. But, you know, there's more than just OCOM working it out with the sheriff's office here. There's everybody being required to work through their issues, as you said. I just don't know that the committee, I guess the committee has the authority to get people to move on to a large degree. But, you know, it's some of these issues, as I understand it, especially when it comes to information that people may feel is privileged on all sides, you know, including HIPAA protected information if it's on the county executive side, on the custody health side. I don't know to what extent even the committee is going to be able to force or arbitrate exactly who should be giving what and when and how much. And then I just think county council's in an awkward and frankly I've never referred to county council in this way before, but I will now based on some of the things I've seen recently, a politicized situation where there's different board members that want different things to come out of you know, this work. And the county council, it's almost impossible for them to come into committee and help us and at the same time put firewalls up in terms of the representation of the sheriff, the representation of county executive, the representation of anyone else, you know, in terms of moving parts here, the board of supervisors itself. So I don't know. That's just my take. I'm not trying to sound doom and gloom, but I'm in a constructive way. I'm saying, well, why don't we just we have this audit. It's the basis, you know, it's not mysterious. You know, somebody could read up on this audit just like we did, just like you and I and our staffs did, and come in professionally and work through it, and at the same time be qualified to debate the legal, you know, any legal issues that pop up in terms of information sharing that should happen, doesn't want to happen, you know, and all those issues. So again, I'll put it out. I just put it out there one more time.
Yeah, and you know what, Dave? Actually, what you're saying is really, really important, because I do think that part of what I wanted to be able to do before we just threw one more thing at Oakland, because I also feel like it's the, you know, it's the place everybody's just going to be tossing things. Is that I think three things at the same time. One, I believe, based on the work that I've seen, that there have been a lot of items that have been completed, and I want to be able to say, look what DOC did, look what the sheriff did, look what our medical team is doing, look what behavioral health done. Like we have lived up to much of the promise we made to the public that we were gonna not forget about Michael Tyree's death, and we weren't going to forget about the goals that we set as a board. So I that's part of it. Is my frustration is that what this report says on most pages is information that would enable us to verify its implementation was requested but has never been provided, and that is to multiple departments. So that's like issue number one is people have done good work and we can't even talk about it. Number two is we can't look at the audit and determine whether or not we see thematic problems with implementation, right? To your very important point. And, you know, for example, are there conflicts that cause challenges, or are there redesign issues, you know, that we need to really consider as a board, which we can't do because we can't look at this audit that the whole board requested. And by the way, 6 people now, because this is how long it's gone on, right? Ken, and now we have Susan. So that the second thing is I worry that we don't know what we don't know. And then the third thing that you just raised about conflicts is kind of a separate issue, but a really important one, which goes back to this issue I started to raise around design, is that do we have structural problems that require redesign because of conflicts? And, you know, for example, I don't know how many attorneys weighed in on this on different parts that essentially kept us from making the information public. And then departments who, you know, I don't think there was ever a request for a single shred of HIPAA information, but we didn't get information from our medical teams. I mean, you know, that doesn't make any sense to me. So part of the reason I want to have the conversation, and maybe to Dr. Smith's point, it's probably a very good idea, and to Deputy Davis's point, or Chief Davis? Yes?
At this point, you can call me whatever you want, I think.
Well, I just want to be...
Assistant Sheriff is fine.
Assistant Sheriff.
Fine, it doesn't matter.
Thank you. Thank you, Assistant Sheriff. I think that at this point, I want to make sure that the challenges with getting the work done get worked through by the board, so that if it goes to OCLEM, or if Cheryl still keeps a part of it, that there's some commitment from everybody about the way we're going to approach it. That's really, because to me, sending it to OCLEM without us getting responded to, I don't know why we think then they would get response. Now your other point that Dave, that I think is a really other critical one that I really hadn't thought about is, are there conflicts that actually the board needs to address as well? I don't know the answer to that. What I would want to recommend is that I think one of two things can happen. This could come back here when our assistant sheriff and our sheriff are available. We can do a time certain, along with Dr. Day, along with, we probably would need behavioral health and Renee here as well, along with county council, along with Martha, along with the other parties, and have a conversation about where does it go and how does it get done? Because the big thing, the real question we're asking is, of the 638 recommendations that were done, how many were accepted, how many have been implemented, which weren't implementable, which did we all not think were a good idea, and how are we moving on from here? But the fact that we haven't been able to get that information, to me, tells me there's an underlying problem. So if we did do a time certain, and even if the group decided it should go to OCLEM, I'd want an agreement that was public about how we move forward. That's really what my goal is, because having the one-on-one conversations has gotten me nothing but older and grumpy. So, Dave, what do you think about that?
I like your sentiment, and if you want me to make a motion that we refer the recommendations, the audit, to OCLEM and all the parties involved, with some stipulation that reflects on your sentiment, just give me those words and I'll include them in the motion.
For our last meeting, which, of the year, that we'll do a time certain to lay the groundwork or the rules publicly about how OCLEM will be able to handle this. If it's going to go to OCLEM, fine, but then I want Renee to say, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to want the CEO's office through Martha, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to want the sheriff and the assistant sheriff to say, here's what we're going to do. And I want county council to do the same.
Well, that's fine. So what instead of referring it, we'll refer it to, we aren't really referring it to OCLEM yet. We are asking for it to come back. We're asking for ground rules and a work plan to come back to the committee that will convince us that referring it to OCLEM will lead to resolution of the audit on an issue by issue basis.
That's well said. Second.
Okay, so we'll expect that document in our packets next time around.
November 19th.
November 19th.
And here's the thing, that everybody, that each department, sheriff through I know you're the Department of Correction and you're the sheriff, but that each group they can put it in writing before the meeting. This is how we're going to be able to work with OCLEM to get this resolved. That's fine, but that will be the discussion at the meeting. And
Supervisor Chavez, if it's there, if it's the administration's, obviously the one staffing this on the ledge file here, and this is their work to do to, not the auditor's work or somebody else's work. Certainly they could do it in conjunction with OCLEM. But if they want to utilize as part of the ground rules and work plan a facilitator, are you open to that being part?
I really am, because that could be an option other than OCLEM, right? I mean, that's fine too.
Or including, it could be both. It can be both, and I certainly didn't mean to make it sound like I wanted to cut OCLEM out of anything. I'm just concerned because of the diversity of the parties that it may take a neutral to be the glue to hold everybody together, especially for a day if you really want to have a productive exercise and resolution of all these audit issues. Anyway, that's just I just want to make sure you're okay, or that it's clear for them that if they opt to bring back a contract facilitator to help them with this, that you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that. Sheriff?
I just wanted to add that in looking at this now, so many of these have been done and can be taken off. What we've been doing for a long time, and I know Tony from the county exec's office has been really good at updating the consolidated recommendations, because a lot of these were taken, put into categories, and there's a lot of response on that. But when you look at these, you know, clearly many can be taken off the list. We were just focusing on consolidated.
And with the list here, and when you're referring to Tony, you're referring to Tony Felice, and you're referring to what?
What I'm referring to is the 655 recommendations that came out of the Blue Ribbon Commission. Those recommendations were all taken and consolidated. And I think that yes, and I'm referring to Tony Felice, I think it's even on the website, but they're always updated. So when you look at this, like one of them says, on the grievance form should be checkboxes. That's a matter for us just to give Cheryl a copy of the grievance form to show it's on there. So it's because some of these were not good ideas, like you said, some were could be consolidated in overall things that needed to be done. I think there was not a lot of work on this document because we were working on the consolidated document that really is thorough and updated. But to get this off our plate, we can go through and start providing stuff to Cheryl. And then if there are things that are really disagreement, then perhaps at that point, we could bring in a facilitator or county council or whatever to those that where there's disagreement or where it's not a good idea potentially.
Yeah, and I think, Sheriff, I understand that point. I think the challenge is that, you know, and again, not to put too fine a point on it, but this is all the same. I mean, these are 5 offices, 6 offices. And so if in fact, a bunch of these were looked at by Tony and, you know, and even the consolidation, there's even disagreement. I don't know if all the board even, when we asked Cheryl to do the audit, we asked Cheryl to audit each item, recognizing that some of the items would be in bunches and batches, but we still wanted them audited. So, you know, if for most of these, if they're done and nobody took the time to give Cheryl the information, that's a problem, right? I mean, that's a problem. So we're going to do a time certain. We're going to give you a chance to look at all of this, see how you best want to resolve it. If you all want to meet before you meet with us, that would be advisable. So that if you could give us one path, that would be helpful. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I appreciate your feedback, Sheriff. Anybody else have anything else they want to raise? No? All right. So with that, we'll see you all at the next meeting.
Well, can I raise something?
Sure.
In agreement with the sheriff, we have posted on our website all of the recommendations and the responses. So we should probably have that when you have the total group together so that we can go over that also.
Well, and this is one area, again, I would ask if it meets the needs of the auditor. So Cheryl would need to look at that and let us know if that meets your needs. I'm presuming that Cheryl looked at that as well, but let's check. Thanks, Jeff. Or Dr. Smith.
Yes, and the information that we were told was compiled was only on the group items, the summarized recommendations, and you know, what we need is evidence that they were implemented at the detail level. That's what we were asked to gather.
And Jeff, I think most of us who worked
that's
on
what we don't have.
Yeah, and most of us who worked on the Blue Ribbon Task Force, in fact, even that website was a request that was made by me. So I get that we have that. That's not what we asked Cheryl for. I mean, it's part of it, but not all of what we asked Cheryl for. Well, okay. So thank you, everybody. I'm sorry this was unpleasant. But I really want to be responsive to what we told people we were going to do as a community. And so we'll see you back. We'll do a time certain and see how we can move forward.
And Supervisor Chavez, can I also want to thank everyone. And I also want to say, I'm sorry if it's been unpleasant or difficult conversation, but I think it's in everyone's interest, and not to sound overly magnanimous here, not to have something drifting around that looks like so much hasn't been implemented, when in fact I agree with you, and my own understanding is that a lot has been implemented. And I think the only public document we have out there right now is really not good for us. It's not good for any of us, for anyone in this room right now. It's not probably representative of the good work and good progress that has been made so far. And I know you made that point earlier. I just wanted to punctuate that, even though the vote is over. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's right. So we are wrapping up our meeting. We will meet again November 19th at 2 o'clock, and we'll make this a time certain for 2. Thanks, everyone.